Before we delve into the details, let us first skim through the difference between a skill-based game and a chance-based game. Chance-based games are banned in most states, while games of skill are not. In a game of skill, the player invests his time in learning, practicing, and honing a skill. In its 1957 order, the Supreme Court had said that games of skill would be where success depends principally upon the superior knowledge, training, attention, experience, and adroitness of the player. Games can be a combination of skill and chance, but skill has to be the predominant factor. With IPL just around the corner, fantasy gaming platforms such as Dream11 and Mobile Premier League have just received good news in a state that is home to one of their major markets. On February 14, 2022, the Karnataka High Court struck down select provisions of the Karnataka Police Amendment Act 2021, through which the state government had banned online games that involved monetary stakes. This comes as a huge relief for India's online skill gaming and fantasy sports industry. The judgment follows other similar ones given by the Rajasthan, Punjab and Haryana and Bombay High Courts that recognized fantasy sports as games of skill and a legitimate business activity protected under the Constitution of India. In October last year, the law banning betting and wagering in online games had been notified by the Karnataka government. The law stated that games of chance such as betting websites and online casinos should be banned. Additionally, it said that games of skill where there is a risk of the player losing money should be banned too. However, several Indian courts have previously called games such as fantasy sports, poker and rummy games of skill and deemed them legal. The Supreme Court too upheld Dream11's online fantasy sports format as a game of skill. One of the primary grounds on which the new Karnataka law was challenged was that games of skill, if they were being played for prize or bets, had been clubbed with games of chance. Gaming companies argued that according to a Supreme Court order in 1957, competitive games of skill are to be considered business activities that are protected under Article 19(1)(g) of the Indian Constitution. While the status of games of chance remains unchanged, with the February 14th judgment, at least for the time being, residents of Karnataka should be able to play online games of skill even if monetary stakes are involved. For more clarity, we spoke to Ranjana Adhikari of Indus Law.
So I think the precedent on this question are very fairly set in the form of something called the predominance of skill test. It basically means that there needs to be more than 50% dominance of skill factors over the format of a game. So a very important point that the Karnataka High Court in fact made was that just because a game is played online or it's played for stakes, it does not change the very nature of the game from being skill versus chance. This is a very important point, especially for online gaming. I think where you're talking about where the law went wrong, and I think we need to reflect on what were the reasons for striking down the law as well. One, legislative non-competence of the state to legislate on skill games. There is no legislative competence under what we call as the state list under the Constitution of India. Number two, violation of the fundamental rights to carry on a legitimate business. So any skill-based gaming company, it's a legitimate business already blessed by many Supreme Court decisions as well. There is a slew of precedents spanning over decades on the difference of what is skill and chance. Now, where the Karnataka law went really wrong was trying to impute the betting element and expanding it in the skill gaming context in such a way that even skill games were getting included under the gambling ambit. A court itself gave a very beautiful sentence in their judgment, which said that an activity which is predominantly skill-based, it cannot readily be banned just by a stroke of the legislative pen. So I guess that answers your question. Fantasy games, rummy games, these kind of games are not gambling. So, we should not use them interchangeably. I think the recent decisions of course, the Karnataka High Court, as well as the past Madras High Court decision as well, they have contextualized the entire fundamental right under which, skill games are protected. It talks about having reasonable restrictions, but both these cases have very beautifully spoken about how the restrictions need to be the least intrusive measure that could possibly curb whatever mischief that the government's trying to address. It's going to be almost impossible for any state government, whether Karnataka or any other, to be able to constitutionally justify a complete ban on skill-based gaming. I'm not talking about gambling over here, because gambling is pretty much under their purview.
A win in Karnataka is morale boosting for the industry. There is a thriving online gaming ecosystem based out of Karnataka's capital, Bengaluru. In fact, the state is reportedly home to at least 91 Indian gaming companies and developers. To understand the business impact of this verdict, one has to consider the size of the Indian gaming ecosystem. According to a 2021 report published by VC firm Sequoia and management consultancy company BCG, India's mobile gaming sector will grow from $1.5 billion in revenue in 2020 to $5 billion by 2025. The report said that while Indian gaming companies initially made money through in-game advertising, 80% of the $1.5 billion generated by mobile gaming in 2020 came from real money game spends and in-app purchases. In fact, there are now more than 300 million gamers in India. Meanwhile, revenue across all gaming devices hit $1.8 billion in 2020, up 500% from 2016. Let us now go to Roland Landers, CEO of All India Gaming Federation.
We have seen, that in successive high courts have adjudicated in a similar vein, whereby these bans and restrictions owing to a player playing a game with an entry fee or a subscription is completely legit and is does not is not tantamount to, does not equate it with gambling, because these are games of skill and covered under the constitution as the right to do business. So a lot of the consumers and gamers demonstrate that there are certain life skills that they are also learning in terms of agility, mental agility, adroitness, so many of skill sets. So overall online skill gaming is about $1.5 billion. In that there will be the advertising led models also. But if you speak specifically of the entry fee led subscription led gaming, then it will be about $1 billion. The thing is that there is an extremely large gray market of offshore gambling companies which are operating everywhere across the country, in all states. None of these laws are applicable to any of them. And what you're talking about, as reported in the media, is mostly happening on the gray market gambling sites. It has nothing to do with the Indian registered skill gaming companies. What needs to be banned is those guys. And all these issues, social issues that you mentioned, emanate from there, start and end over there.
However, the relief provided by the Karnataka High Court could be short-lived. The bench made it clear that the entire act is not struck down and the judgment will not stand in the way of legislature bringing in a new law in consonance with the constitution against gambling. After the verdict came out, Karnataka's Home Minister Araga Gyanendra told a financial daily that the state government might draft a new law to prohibit online gambling and betting. Gyanendra said that the government was studying the judgment in detail, especially focusing on the sections of the law that were found to be not in conformity with the constitution. The Home Minister added that the state government would prefer to rectify the identified shortcomings so that the new draft would be able to stand in a court of law. According to him, the government remains committed to banning betting and gambling in online games with appropriate legislation.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.